Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to the SuperConnectivity Podcast. I am the churlish Charlie Esser, and along with me today is...
Praying Phil Parrish. Let's go with that.
Praying Phil, like the mantis, the
There
praying
you go.
Phil Parrish. So, Phil, a lot to talk about this week, not the least of which is our last episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Where we got the big reveal, the Inhumans, though not called out. But to do the math on this, we have Terrigen, we have crystals in the thing, a mist that is released by the crystals, and a cocoon of sorts forming around Sky and Flowers, and then our eyeless fellow at the very end, who I think is most likely Karnak, although Karnak's never been drawn without eyes. Having a man without eyes saying, "Are you seeing this?" showing that extrasensory perception kind of fits to Karnak's basic role, which is, a person who sees all the flaws in things and can strike out at them. So I think that's Karnak. I believe he was on the phone with Medusa, which is just one of these odd things to think about, the Inhumans just talking on a cell phone. But I guess when you think about it, they probably do at times,
Mm-hmm. But do you really think would they introduce one of the royal family on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? They wouldn't save them all for the movie or one of the other movies?
Well, here's how you got to. I mean, because that is because as Jack called me out for the other night when we got the real Kree reveal, because of course I was saying, well, it's probably not the Kree, it probably maybe is the Atlanteans, because I don't think we're going to get the Inhumans here, because the Inhumans are set up for the movies, and if the Inhumans are going into the movies, they're not going to introduce them here on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., especially not this early. But here we are, and it is the Kree. And like I said, even if they're not going to call it out by name, it has to be the Inhumans. And again, with Medusa, we don't actually have to ever see her, although Karnak is part of the royal family. Mm-hmm. And so if that was Karnak, then that is, he is part of the royal family, etc. But the thing to me is, if you have the Inhumans, they're here. They're here, and it's real hard for them to pedal it back. And I have to think that maybe they don't want to, And this is the thing, and with the Marvel universe, with this expansive Marvel universe, cinematic universe, there is so much story that goes along with all these characters that just telling the stories in the movies isn't practical. And this is something that we get constantly. It's the big complaint about superhero movies is every new superhero, and why people really hate when they have to reboot something, because every reboot is another origin story. So we have to see the story that you're probably already familiar with if you're going to see the story, if you're going to see the movie anyway, but you have to go through it all. And once again, but with these series, with these smaller pieces, you can get more detail on these stories to play them out, to give this backstory, so that when you get to the Inhumans movie, you can actually you can just sort of go into it, because all this backstory is out there. It's in the ether. It's on the internet. It's there for people to absorb, so that when they get into it, you just give your basic, Odin talking about the history, 5-minute starter, and then, okay, now we're into it, Though who's going to do the narration? Well, I guess Medusa will do the narration for the Inhumans. That makes sense. She usually does the talking. And you don't actually have to have Medusa on. So, for example, to have Medusa be the person on the other line, you don't actually have to have Medusa in this series. Like I've said, you can have the wisp of hair, off screen, or even just they're talking to the queen. Say just someone saying, "Yes, my queen," and that's all you need. And as I've said, I always thought it was very interesting that the obelisk turns people to stone, and of course the Queen of the Inhumans is Medusa. I don't know if that's intentional or what, but it makes for an interesting a point there, I think. So I think we're very much into the Inhumans now. I don't think they're going to start pulling away from the Inhumans just because they're going to the movie. I think, in fact, that probably we're going to get a lot more of it. I think that that's going to be the whole crux of the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think the shows, like I said, I don't know if they were going to go into the royal family, but I think they're going to introduce the concept. We're going to get the background, who they are, where they come from, all this so that, but this way, by the time the movie starts or they show up in one of the Avengers movies, they're like, oh, okay, I've heard of this. I know where the Inhumans come from.
Yes. Now, there is another possibility, if they are going to backtrack, and I guess that would be that they have these tribes of lost Inhumans, which is something that that was introduced in the Marvel universe not too long ago, just before the did they even have a name for that crisis where everyone attacked Earth and Thanos attacked Earth at the same? With the builders destroying everything, or
I don't think.
Don't know if that actually had a name, but they introduced this idea that all throughout the world there are these pockets, these tribes of lost Inhumans who have only a small amount of Terrigen crystals, which would meet with what we have in the obelisk, and that they only allow the most worthy to partake. Whereas, in the Black Bolt Kingdom, every Inhuman born goes in and experiences the Terrigenis. I believe that's how the Inhumans work in the Inhuman world of Black Bolt and the Queen. It always seemed that way, but I'm not an expert, and they may have gone back and forth on that.
I think it's how that worked until didn't they recently drop a Terrigen bomb and many people on the planet just all of a sudden went in the cocoons and came out with powers.
So that is what happened. Yes, and of course that is what I thought might happen here, but they're not going to go that far yet. Which is that Black Bolt lets off the Terrigen bomb, basically spreads this cloud of Terrigen mist, which is supposed to have no effect on humans, but anyone that had enough Inhuman DNA in them went in and had some sort of a transformative experience where they came out with these powers. Now, it was suggested, because actually I was a little disappointed that they went with having Sky's real name be Daisy. But then John reminded me, or not John, was it John or was it Rob? Someone on Twitter while we were doing this reminded me of the character Daisy Johnson, who is Quake, who actually wound up as Nick Fury's selection to be the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. At some point during one of the many S.H.I.E.L.D. collapses that we've lived through in recent years. So sort of when he had his little secret S.H.I.E.L.D., he made Daisy Johnson director, which makes me wonder about what the Theta Protocol is, and who winds up as the de facto head of S.H.I.E.L.D. if as Coulson said, no one made it out. If Sky's the only one to come out, then does she wind up, or Daisy, if she does, she wind up as director Daisy Johnson. which would suggest that the Doctor's actual name is Cal Johnson. I was hoping he might have been Carl Malice, but we'll have to see. And we still don't know if he's got some kind of Well, it seems like he has some kind of something in him, some kind of powers, because he was able to rip the thing off his neck, and he obviously has a lot more to him than just being a middle-aged doctor.
Oh, her father?
Yeah, her father.
They did. I don't remember hearing it in the show, but I've read in a couple places that they said they did reveal his identity.
Well, he said his name is Cal.
Yeah, well, you know who they say he is?
Who?
Kelvin Zabo, Mr. Hyde.
Oh, that makes sense. Kelvin Zabo. Wow, see, man, they do dig deep on this. That would actually make a lot of sense. So we have an Inhuman woman and Kelvin Zabo producing Skye, which could mean that Skye has a little Hyde in here.
It depends where they go to with that story, because I mean, if they go with the comic book origin, didn't he ingest some chemical formula to turn himself into Hyde?
Yeah, well, in the comic book story, it's very much just it's just literally Stanley just said, hey, let's take Robert Louis Stevenson's stories and just completely plagiarize it, and we're going to just say that was his inspiration, so that because Kelvin Zabo was inspired by Mr. Hyde, he just decided to turn himself into Mr. Hyde, which not the brightest idea anyone ever had, but why not? It works for me. Actually, I always thought that it would be a very interesting story to tell of sort of a Mr. Hyde kind of concept, except you start off with some kind of prison experimentation program where you start off with the guy who's this, sociopathic serial killer, and then you give him this chemical that makes him grow a conscience, and how that messes up his life, where now he has this conscience. Although I guess maybe that might be what the Clockwork Orange was. I don't know. Anyway, well, Kelvin Zabo, that is a good one. Although then her name is Daisy Zabo, which that doesn't work for Daisy for Quake. But yes, but that's interesting. They did not reveal that he is Kelvin Zabo, although that would make sense because his name is Cal. And Cal he clearly had something in the tank, like we said, though we don't see him fully hide out. And Mr. Hyde, depending on the writer, he's been shown to be like almost Hulk level with strength and ferocity.
Oh yeah, hasn't he battled both the Hulk and Thor?
Oh yeah. Well, he is an old Thor villain. He's a Thor villain, and that's actually something that I find kind of interesting in this thing. That's kind of one of these overlooked points, but one thing that we've had established here now in our MCU through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that there are multiple origins of powers, because we have a powered individual in Crusher Krell who can't hold the obelisk. So he is special. He is superhuman. But when he holds the obelisk, it turns him to stone, just like it turns any other normal non-inhuman to stone, and that's interesting. And speaking of which, big spoiler here, they seemingly killed Trip, and that really broke my heart to see, after he kicks the crystals, which I do not know how that seemed like a good idea at the time. I know, I'll kick the crystals. Because first off, Skye was already turned to stone, so whatever was I don't know what that was supposed to do. But he kicks the crystals, and then, it explodes, and then he starts getting the stone covering too. Now, we see that it cracks, and he doesn't come out of it. Which I couldn't quite see, because on my TV, I had to actually watch it again on my phone to actually get the high def where I could see what happened. And it looks like, from what we saw, that Raina breaks out of hers first, although we don't see what happens with her. And then Skye breaks out and does the little explosion thing that starts the quake, which again, suggesting Daisy Johnson. And then Trip just sort of crumbles to dust. Now, maybe something else happens with Trip. Maybe he, I don't know. Maybe something else happened with him. I don't know. It's it would not. It would be kind of rough, I think, for Joss to have the second African American character have a tragic ending. So he's had two main African American characters on the show, both end very tragically, and
It's a Marvel show, though. He could come back somewhere.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that no, he was transformed by the mist too, and now maybe he is mist, or he is something. He is some other character. But we've definitely been left with this real shocking turn of events here, because we had Mac, and again, Mac Mac comes out of his thing just to run into Coulson, just as they both possibly get buried in the collapsing temple. So again, second African American character being treated poorly by Joss Whedon. So, well, though again, they could all dig up, because I don't think we're going to lose Coulson on this. I think if anyone out of this survives, it has to be Coulson. Coulson is very interesting. And here's something that I find very interesting about this entire storyline. We know that the people with the Kree or Inhuman DNA can hold the obelisk. We know that Whitehall basically filled himself up with anything from Sky's mother that he could. Yet he never tries to pick up the obelisk. And I found that very fascinating, that for all his talk about, experimentation, he never had the courage to actually see if he was special or not. But just, he wanted the power, but was afraid to actually see if he could actually control it or have it. I kind of thought that spoke a lot about the character and his own moral weakness. I don't know, and I don't know if that was intentional, but that's sort of what I got from that. That here he is. Here are these really special people. Here are these actual Supermen, to use the vernacular of the Nazis, and this guy who so wants to be that, but is so aware of his own lack of being it. He wants to control it. He wants to have the power, but he knows in his heart he's not worthy, and so never touches it. I thought it was a very interesting statement there.
Well, do you think Whitehall's actually dead?
Well, that's an interesting question, because of course we know he fell down dead, and we know that Cal definitely thought he was dead. Now, could he have healed? I mean, 33 thought he was dead too. And 33, who I'm really convinced, and can I just say, I feel so bad for the actress who played 33 in the first two episodes. Because here's this woman who got this really great meaty part, and they say, oh, and we're going to have your character get scarred, and maybe they told her, oh, and the character becomes Madame Hydra, and she's thinking, awesome. It's like, oh, but we're going to actually have Ming now, we're going to have Ming play that role. It's like, man, that poor actress. It's like, had that shot, and then they just decided to just double up on the Ming. Which, hey, I'm not necessarily complaining about, because who doesn't love her in there? But it's going to be frustrating when you're that actress who's cast to Agent 33, and then Agent 33 kind of goes somewhere else. But I certainly hope that whether that actress comes back, or because if she gets the rest of that device off of her face, or if they leave in the role, I hope that she comes back as Madam, or as Viper, and we get that whole Viper and Ward storyline, because that looked like it could be interesting. I would love to see Viper and Ward, sort of with Whitehall gone, make their move to take over Hydra, and I think that would be pretty awesome. But that's all for later. But speaking of the future of Marvel, we had something very interesting happen in Access this week that I have not gotten the chance to read yet, but I know you have, and I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, if you listen to Enough Said, they already dropped the bomb over there. But in the latest issue of Access, the Scarlet Witch, who's been inverted, so now she's acting all evil, She's fighting Magneto and her brother Quicksilver, and she attempts to cast a spell or a hex, whatever, that would hurt her bloodline, which the spell affects Quicksilver, but it does not affect Magneto.
And what exactly does it do? Do we know that yet?
No, I think she was just trying to cause, like, it was just like some kind of physical attack, or like cause pain that, whoever she cast it against, because like Quicksilver basically just like hit the ground in pain. That was about it. But yeah, Magneto was unaffected, so I guess Marvel's big thing now is Magneto is not their father.
Dun dun dun. Well, that opens up an interesting can of worms. As we've mentioned before, as we mentioned during the Agent Carter episode, was I on with you with Agent? Yeah, you and I were here with Agent. We were the ones talking Agent Carter, and we went over the fact that Madeline Joyce, Miss America, who would be a very interesting character to see in an ongoing Agent Carter series, along with the Wizard, was originally, when the characters were originally created, supposed to be the mother of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. The idea being that Quicksilver had the powers similar to the Wizard, and Madeline and Scarlet Witch, I guess, in their idea, thinking that her powers kind of matched up a little bit with Miss America, in the fact that in the early days her powers were much more aligned with telekinesis, which would be, I guess, similar to the flight power of Miss America. And now, if this is this big reveal that she and Quicksilver are not really the children of Magneto, that would be interesting, and would open up that possibility that maybe they really were the children of the Wizard, which makes for interesting retcons, because originally that was because they retconned it once, and then they retconned it again, and now maybe they're going to retcon it back. But what's interesting about it is that it presents the possibility that, depending on how you define it, that maybe Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver aren't even mutants. Maybe because if their parents were superpowered and gained their powers through means other than mutation, maybe they aren't actually mutants. And this is an interesting question about how Marvel defines mutants. And I'm wondering if, because this gets into kind of the weeds of it. Marvel, basically, when they signed the deal with Fox for the X-Men, they said that all mutants belong to Fox. But within that, we have this question. I don't know how well they defined what a mutant was. As an example, is Franklin Richards a mutant? He's usually referred to as being a mutant, but of course his parents are superpowered. Now his powers don't follow that superhuman line of so he doesn't have stretching powers or invisibility powers. He has nigh omnipotent powers, which is pretty good powers as powers go. But his powers aren't coming from a randomized mutation of the X gene. They are, theoretically at least, coming from his parental line of powers. And along those same lines, you have a character like, just as another character, Scar, who is the son of the Hulk, who is never referred to as a mutant, but has his Hulk powers from his parents, where it's following that true line. And if we want to say, well, a mutant has to have a mutation, an alteration of the mutant line, to be, that it has to be this, their power, that it can't be, I have my powers because, so basically the idea being that when someone mutates, they gain a power, and that power is unique to that mutation, and every mutant should have different powers from anyone else in their bloodline. And what's interesting is that if that's how you want to redefine mutants, then Wolverine is not a mutant, because the Howlets all have the same powers. And they're the only mutants that we see that happening with. Because when you look at like Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers' son, they don't. I don't know what powers they have. The few times I've actually seen that character, I don't even know if the character's still there, if they've retconned him out, or if he's been eaten by goblins or what have you. At this point,
Well,
you know,
he was Cable.
oh well, yeah, I know he eventually becomes Cable.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the baby, because I remember in the Inferno storyline, he was just a baby then.
Mm-hmm.
That was Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers' child, and he didn't have telekinesis or eye beams, and I don't know what happened to the baby. I know that eventually we get Cable, who is I guess is that baby all grown up.
Yeah, as a baby, he gets infected with Apocalypse infects him with a techno-organic virus. He gets sent like I don't know 1,000 years into the future, and he lives almost a whole life there and comes back as Cable.
Okay, so crazy mutant stories.
Yeah, I don't.
But anyway, but the point is that his power set is different than his parents. But if the power set follows the parents, then can you really call them a mutant? Because it's no longer a mutation. It's that gene just being passed on.
I thought the definition of mutant is their powers didn't have to be similar to their parents as long as like they were born with that X gene in their DNA, even if it didn't manifest for a few years, they were a mutant.
That's where it gets interesting because Marvel, and I mean, you never want to think that Marvel is being that Machiavellian with these long-term plans, but when they came out with Avengers Academy, they made it explicit. These characters are not mutants. They have these powers, but they are not mutants. They were all born with these powers. None of them were exposed to radio. They just developed these powers, but they are not mutants. And in all of their cases, they are all characters where there is theoretically some link to another villain or super being that with the exception, well, actually not necessarily with the exception of Metal, because actually that was one thing I pointed out when I was writing little nerd letters to them with them, was that, Hazmat and Metal had power sets very similar to Vapor and Ironclad from the UFOs. I had originally thought that what's his name? The guy with the electricity powers. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Who, Electro?
No. He's not Electro. He's he's one of the Avengers Academy kids who had electricity powers. I want to say it was I'm blanking on his name. No, at first I thought he might be one of Strucker's like kids because they had electricity powers. But actually, when they scarred up his face, I realized they were giving him the lightning bolt. They gave him the lightning bolt scars of the Molecule Man. So I'm thinking maybe he has like Molecule Man like powers, but he's only manifesting them on electrons. In the way that maybe Molecule Man, when he first got his powers, could only affect inorganic things. And then, of course, they very explicitly suggested that Finesse got her powers because she's possibly the daughter of the Taskmaster. So it becomes this question, and they have had a couple other people like that where their powers were from a parent. And that was the other thing, was the caterpillars. All of Nick Fury's caterpillars, which included, Johnny Blaze's kid, Daisy Johnson, Quake, whose parent, I don't know exactly who her parents were supposed to be, the lost son of the Absorbing Man, the Dr. Druid's son. They all had these powers that they got because of their lineage to their parents, but they were all expressly not mutants as well. So it could be that Marvel is sort of trying to whittle down what can be defined as a mutant, and maybe even is suggesting that, a lot of people that we thought were mutants are now actually going to be revealed to be not mutants, which goes to some of the solicits we saw for January in this week's Amazing Spider-Man, which included the new Uncanny Avengers, which has, I believe, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch standing in front of the sign that I believe says no mutants, perhaps suggesting that they are not actually mutants anymore, which would be an interesting thing. I don't know how much it would really affect the deal with Fox, but as has been suggested, could be a gesture from Disney, Marvel to Fox about their universe.
Hmm.
Um, it's
Well,
all
since
rampant speculation.
yeah, since they are going to be entering the MCU, do you think they could make their origin? Could they be Inhumans?
Well, they could be. I mean, that might be the suggestion. But honestly, I'm actually thinking that no. I think that their power that um, if from what we've seen of them in the MCU, we see that their powers are awoken by the mind gem. Which I think it's been confirmed that it is the mind gem in Loki's staff. I saw something that suggested that, though that might have been something completely different. That might have been something that was just created as a hoax. But it seemed to suggest that yes, the stone in Loki's staff was the mind gem, and in that idea, it is that awakening of ultimate potential in the human mind for superpowers, which is again something that is very much in the regular Marvel universe, and it was actually something I noticed when I was rewatching the first season of Agents of Shield, which with Deathlock when he's first has his powers and he's trying to maintain, and he says, "I know if I can be good enough, I can have these powers." And it was this idea that it was your moral fortitude that gave you superpowers, that moral strength that allowed you to survive, to be the hero. So that idea, throughout all of the MCU, which has always been the case, that humans with powers, you get them because of who you are, that it's a reflection of your inner being. Much like Erskine says in Captain America to Steve Rogers, that what's good becomes better, what's bad becomes worse, and that's how you define superhumanity in the Marvel universe. And which as you're going to define things, as that's a pretty good way to go.
Mm.
I mean, well, that's always been a thing for me in the just to go a little deeper into the Disney archives in the the Incredibles universe. In the Incredibles universe, we never see any superpowered villains in it. All the villains we see or get mentioned all seem to be tech based, whereas the heroes all seem to have intrinsic superpowers. I've always wondered if that was sort of their way of saying that only the only people with the potential to be heroes were the ones who got powers in that universe, and that that anyone could be a tech based and anyone could be a tech based hero, anyone could be a tech based villain, but to actually be a real super, you had to actually be worthy of it. Um, and there was an Incredibles comic book that might work against that, because I think there was a clairvoyant supervillain or one supervillain who had some sort of powers, but I'm not quite sure on that. That's actually something I've actually wanted to read since I found out there was this whole Impossibles comic book out there that I never got the chance to read. So I've definitely got to look for that, the trade paperback of that. But anyway, and that's very much in the Marvel universe, and I'm dying to see what Flowers becomes, because I think she did become something in there, because it looked like when they were showing the hands cracking out, it looked like it looked like Flowers was cracking out of one cocoon and Sky cracked out of hers, and then poor old Trip cracked up. So mad about that, man. Don't want to lose Trip. I like Trip,
He could be back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. When people were talking about, oh, they need to whittle down the cast. Well, they may well have. Although it's funny because the episode before that with Mac and and his little Lola, radio controlled Lola, I was just noticing how many Shield agents were in the hub. And along those lines, there was a lot of speculation about Mockingbird having this little side project. And I'm wondering, because there was Mockingbird did start her own Shield-like agency called the World Counterterrorism Agency, that was brought up in the Hawkeye Mockingbird limited series just after Secret Invasion. And it makes me wonder if we might that if that is what her little side project is, that it is that there's this other that she was actually recruiting her own ex-Shield agents in the same way that Coulson was prior to this, and I wonder if that's going to get a tie-in to Hawkeye, because I thought that would be a very interesting thing to get Jeremy Renner to do a cameo, maybe at the end of the season, maybe going into Age of Ultron, with him coming in and finding out that there is this relationship between him and Mockingbird, and that there is this counterterrorism agency, and then of course. The season finale, then they reveal that Mockingbird's a Skrull.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, because that's the other thing I'm thinking. It's like, well, we got the Kree. How long until we're going to find out that Mockingbird's a Skrull? Because because I mean, they've definitely Disney and Marvel has definitely positioned themselves to say that things that were thought to be in other universes, they say, well, no, we're just sharing them. Basically, what Disney Marvel did when they pushed Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch into Avengers, or actually into Captain America, is they basically said, in their own way, I think, that they were reclaiming everything that they had sold off, because they were saying, well, these characters are so intrinsic to the storyline that they're in everybody's that they're also Avengers. And so in that way, well, the Skrulls, the Kree Skrull War, that is intrinsic to the Avengers storyline. So of course we still own the Skrulls. They're not just in the Fantastic Four universe. And and then certain other characters. We've got these. How many other mutants are there that were central to the Avengers? I mean, we have the Beast, Hank McCoy, who was a very central Avenger for a very long time. Still is. He's one of the Illuminati. They may have structured themselves into this position where, we can't have the X-Men, but we can pretty much have every character on the X-Men because they're actually intrinsic to the Marvel storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't surprise me if that's where they're moving with that. Because really from their perspective, and this is why I always say it is a very difficult thing when everyone wants to see that crossover between the MCU and one of the other universes, one of the other Marvel universes, is that, from Marvel's point of view, it is always less, that they don't have as strong of an incentive to bring Spider-Man or the X-Men into their universe as Sony or Fox has to try and get into the Disney universe, because if Disney gives cross promotion to Sony or Fox, it increases the brand that Sony or Fox has to tie them to the Avengers. Which is, so far a pretty big franchise machine, which makes it more likely that their own movies will get bigger, meaning much less likely for Disney to ever actually fully get it back. So Disney is in that way kind of disincentivized to want to bring these characters in, except in ways that where they can redefine them as their own characters in their own universes, separate from the pieces that they've sold off. And I do wonder. So, for example, we have Howard Stark. I wonder if we're going to see Nathaniel Richards, perhaps, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We know that there's mention of this organization or these associations that Howard Stark has, which we've suspected could be the Order of the Shield, of which Franklin Richards, or not, Nathaniel Richards was a member of. And so they can say, well, no, we can't have Reed Richards, but we can have Nathaniel Richards. Nathaniel Richards isn't just Fantastic Four. He's also this other storyline, this other aspect that is intrinsic to the Marvel Universe. So, it's interesting the things they could open up there. But that's all speculation. Yeah.
Did you see the rumor this week that supposedly Sony and Marvel were meeting about possibly a Spider-Man crossover with the MCU?
I did not see that rumor, although I'm sure it's similar to every other rumor we get once a week.
Yeah, supposedly it just said that they were in talks, nothing definite yet, but...
Well, you see, and that's the thing. Like, for Sony, they have a real incentive to talk. because they want to save their Spider-Man. Marvel has this disincentive. So for Marvel or Disney, because really it's Disney. Disney's the one calling the shots on this. For Disney to allow Spider-Man to get the cross promotion through the MCU, they are going to demand stuff. They're going to say, well, okay, here's how we're going to work it. We're going to have this split deal. We're going to start taking over creatively of your Spider-Man universe. We're going to have we're going to have rules about what you can and can't do because this is our brand. And if you want us to promote it and you get your share, you're going to have to play. Basically, I'm sure Disney's going to say, if you want Spider-Man in the MCU, you'll get your MCU money, but we're going to be in control of it. And that's the thing, and I'm sure that would be a rule with your X-Men, assuming that they don't just, by sheer legal manipulation, bring all the X-Men back. I mean, because it's like they've already got 2 down. I'm sure, and like I said, if they want to redefine Wolverine as no longer a mutant, they could bring in Wolverine. They really theoretically could. It wouldn't be Hugh Jackman Wolverine. It would be a new Wolverine. It would be their version of Wolverine in this universe, which is going to be a little hard because I know Hugh Jackman has gotten so iconic as Wolverine. But they could say, well, no, the Wolverine was never a mutant, and he really wasn't really ever a mutant. That was actually always this thing with Wolverine, that there was something different about him. And what I would say that different thing is that the Howlets breed true, unlike other mutants. That what makes Wolverine, that healing factor, that power he has, is something that it's all the Howlets, not Hewitts. The Howlets have it, whether that is Wolverine, what's his name, Sabretooth, or X-23, or I forget Wolverine's son's name right now, or
Dakin or whatever.
Yeah, Dakin. Yeah. Or whoever remembers him from the MC2 universe, Wild Thing, which is the child of Wolverine and Elektra, who just never gets the respect she deserves. And speaking of alternate universes, let's shift to Spider-Man for a minute, because of course we have the big end of the world event in Spider-Man going on right now. And this is something that's kind of bugged me with it. It's bugged me a lot because with this, every Spider-Man ever, they are killing off a lot of the Spider-Mans ever. And this week, they killed Spider-Monkey, who I have a love for the Marvel Apes universe, a deep and abiding love for the Marvel Apes universe. I would love to see Ape Speedball, who is in the 616, get some more play out there. But they killed Spider-Monkey. And this bothers me because it seems like they're cleaning up I mean, you can always have this argument that, this other character, that there is another Spider-Monkey and another, with the way they do their infinite universes, for every Spider-Monkey that dies, there's a Spider-Monkey who lives, and that kind of structure. Although, it kind of makes these numbering of universes kind of pointless. But it's hard for me to see them kill Spider-Monkey. They also killed Captain Spider, who was, and granted, not everyone is going to be that worried about the death of Captain Spider, except that he's Flash Thompson from another universe where he gets bitten by the spider, by the radioactive spider, and sort of decides to model himself after Captain America because he decides to be a hero. He decides to be, the best man he could with the powers, and it's kind of that redemption arc from this that the real Flash Thompson has kind of gone through. Well, the real Flash Thompson, the 616 Flash Thompson, has gone through. And in killing these characters off, it bothers me, because, sure, you need your fodder, but, in their own way, these characters kind of serve some kind of belovedness. And, especially, killing off the Cosmic Spider, that was like, oh, really? After all this, you're going to kill off the Cosmic Spider. It was depressing. Although maybe they're gonna bring them all back because you can't really kill the Cosmic Spider because he is the Enigma Force and the force of the universe and the Mother Goddess, and maybe Solus is not nearly as bad as he thinks he is.
But do you think with the Secret Wars coming this spring that I mean, we have this multiversal thing in Spider-Man. We have something multiversal in Avengers. Is everything going to come to a head? Maybe the universes are going to get whittled down, or even everything's just even our universe is going to be broken down, and everything's just going to get rebuilt.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's hard for me to think they're going to do a New 52. I mean, I think the New 52 was something DC could do. I don't think Marvel. There's this phrase I like that is you can't sell Coke with the same ad that you sell Pepsi, because even though the products are ostensibly similar, what people are attracted to about the brands are diametrically opposed. Pepsi, as I always say, Coke is cool, Pepsi is hot. Coke is this, and you see this in their ads. Coke's ads are usually about very small moments and the sharing of a Coke, whereas Pepsi, it's usually about, young hot stars, and, whether it's Michael Jackson or Britney Spears or whomever, and how they're the choice of a new generation. This is what the young hip kids are drinking is Pepsi. Whereas, Coke is always more about, like I said, it's about the cool. It's about being that whether instead of being the interesting new thing, it's being, that solid who you are kind of thing. And so I don't think that Marvel could get away with just completely restarting their universe.
But what if it's not a reboot? What if they're just sweeping everything off the table and they're gonna set everything back up, kind of the way it is, but they're gonna order it where it's gonna be maybe instead of the 616 universe, this universe is now Universe 1, and they'll say this is Universe 1, but in Universe 2 we have these characters, Universe 3 we have these characters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but again, that's very much kind of, I think, very much in line of the New 52. It's even if you don't do its own origin story, even if you don't take everything back to its origin story, one of the things about Marvel is its clutteredness, I think, and I think that is that is and to give you an example, and we look at something like this idea that maybe Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch aren't really the children of Magneto. That there is this whole history that has been rewritten dozens of times. Because when we first see them, it's not even suggested. When we first see Magneto and Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, it is never suggested by either their behavior or their actions that they are in any way think they're related or believe they're related. In fact, there's several scenes, I guess, where Magneto is actively creeping on Scarlet Witch, like, oh yeah, sexy little Scarlet Witch, which not appropriate if he actually felt they were his kids. Now, of course, when we get into our modern universe, you are given the suggestion almost that Magneto raised them at a certain point, that maybe he found them, but he raised them, and while they were still very young, he was still very influential on them and their lives. Which is a break from the previous continuity, but they use that clutteredness to its advantage because there is this cluttered history. They allow themselves to have that very different. They can explore different possibilities, and they're not particularly apologetic about it. And it can frustrate, super uber nerds, but most people, and again, and this is where I say it's different than Coke and Pepsi. Most people at this point, I think, if you're into Marvel, that these kind of break-ins are there, that these kind of separations from the past are in the story. That when that the character we're going to see now might as well be a brand new character, but at the same time we're not ignoring all of the history. We're just adding to it, and in that adding to that, the old stories aren't. I don't want to say they're not as relevant because they're still part of the canon, but we're going to add on this new piece, and we're going to add on this new piece, and we're going to add on this new piece, so that what was there, you don't take it at face value because there's something else going on. And when we revisit it, we'll explain it when we revisit it, And man, we've been talking for a while here, but I still want to get a couple more things in there because speaking of retconning and changing the history of everything, we are going to be getting in time for the Peggy Carter series, a Peggy Carter comic book coming in January, which will be Peggy Carter and Howard Stark, extraterrestrial investigators, which is just, as if Peggy Carter's history was not tortured enough. Uh, where, she's, Sharon Carter's sister, now she's her aunt, and she was a little bit older, now she's a lot older, and this and that and the other. So we're going to get this further changing of the Peggy Carter origin, to have her in this situation with Howard Stark, and the new Howard's the new storyline of Howard Stark, and which I'm sure is going to be coinciding a lot with what the series is going to be, and they're going to be investigating these extraterrestrial phenomenon, and probably in some way or another coming to be aware of the Order of the Shield. Maybe Peggy doesn't get become actively aware of it, but we're going to get, I'm sure that the Order of the Shield will come into this, since we know Howard Stark and the gentleman who was, I believe his name was Waldo, who he died. He died in the just before Nick Fury got to be the Watcher on the wall, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
So which is another character we could see in our retconned Peggy Carter universe here. Where Marvel adds on, Marvel doesn't destroy. That is what I'm saying. What I'd like to say about Marvel is I don't feel that Marvel destroys their universes. They add on to them. And when we see that, for example, when we have what was it? I can't remember if it was Morlun or one of the other inheritors. He goes to the Spider-Man and their Amazing Friends universe and kills Spider-Man and his amazing friends. It's tragic and frustrating and upsetting if you happen to have that as part of your history, but at the same time, that it's been destroyed in that universe does not mean that those characters are gone, really. And that's the thing, is that Spider Monkey, Spider Ham, Captain Spider, any one of these characters could be there in another universe, could be there from another timeline. Along those same lines, interestingly enough, also in our Amazing Spider-Man storyline, we got Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man teaming up. Ultimate Spider-Man from the cartoon and the comic book, Ultimate Spider-Man, or now Ultimate Spider-Man and the Web Warriors comic book, and Miles Morales from the official Ultimate Spider-Man Ultimate universe teaming up, and they visit the 1968 Spider-Man universe and make comments about the animation, like, what, that can't possibly be the Daily Bugle building. It's only 6 windows wide. What building in Manhattan is only 6 windows wide? And which is kind of funny. But they also had as they enter into that cartoon universe, you have Spider-Man, cartoon Ultimate Spider-Man doing, as he does in the cartoon, daydream cutaway sequence, which he then has to explain what that is to Miles Morales, which is, this is what makes Marvel Comics great. That in this deadly serious Marvel Comics universe, you can have Spider-Ham coming into it, and you can have 1968 Spider-Man coming into it. And, man, I would love it if 1968 Spider-Man, in some way or another, is the key to everything, that he is the one that destroys it just because, the laws of his universe are dramatically different, in some way. I don't know what it is, but, because it's just that whole thing where they're just commenting on how, on the, in the wrong way, commenting on the really poor animation there, which is like, there's only one building with a sign on it, and of course it's Daily Bugle, so we know where Peter Parker is. It's interesting to have that crossover, and like I said, the Amazing Friends probably do exist somewhere else in another pocket universe, and that I always thought was the beauty of Marvel not having Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 4, where it was like this small number of uniquely altered universes. That in the Marvel universe, in the What If universes, it's it's the many worlds theory of uh, of of comics, really, that, or as it is in string theory or M theory, that there's many worlds, and you can have literally an infinite number of possible dimensions and possible worlds uh, within quantum mechanics, where everything is possible and everything exists. And I think that embracing that has always been kind of Marvel's strength. So I don't think they're going to really destroy that for a much more tidier universe. But I do think they're going to have. Well, I mean, we know. Well, we don't know, but we think that the Secret Wars event is going to be that multiple universes coming together and colliding and dealing with each other. It's always very fascinating. I mean, now within that concept, and this goes into that entire idea, is that if you have that infinite universe, then for every universe that is the Illuminati letting the Earth be destroyed, if the Earth gets destroyed in one of these events, or if 616 disappears, there is a 616.2 somewhere, because when one comes in, ceases to exist, another comes in, Although I'm very interested to see what happens with that, with Doom and the Molecule Man, because that seems to very strongly suggest the Beyonder. Just because wherever the Beyonder is, the Molecule Man is not far behind, and vice versa. And I love the Beyonder, and I want him to come back.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, because you need that character that can beat up Celestials, You need something that is beyond, and something that is beyond is something that's really great. And, what's unique about the Beyonder, of course, is that, because like right now in the Marvel universe, we have this rule, which is only the ultimate cosmic thing from its own universe can be ultimate and cosmic, and the Beyonder is the whole of a universe that can come into another universe and still be the ultimate whole of that universe, and that is why the Beyonder is cool, because he is that thing just beyond everything else, and we see that the Infinity Gems don't work in other universes, and if you try to use the Infinity Gems to do something that they don't have powers when they go into another universe, but within their own universe they have unlimited power. And if you are the in Captain Universe in the Spider-Man story, he had theoretically unlimited cosmic power for what it's worth. In his own universe, but he couldn't go to another universe and do damage. But the Beyonder was the one thing who absolutely could, and which, hey, that would be a great way to deal with Solus. Open up a pinhole to the Beyonder's dimension, and have him come and be the hero that the Beyonder always wanted to be.
Oh yeah.
If anyone remembers the Beyonder's battle cry when he was very briefly a superhero for one issue, when he decided he was going to be the hero who battles for life, the force of life, as opposed to the force of death in the universe, and yeah, that worked out. It like all things, it did not work out well at all. If you were one of the 4 people who read Secret Wars 2, like I was, it was a great issue. Okay. I think that is about all we have time for today, unless you got something else you want to hit on, Phil?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. So this has been, there's a lot more to talk about, and we will talk about it all again next week on SuperConnectivity. I am your host, the churlish Charlie Esser. Can't even say my name anymore. The churlish Charlie Esser. And with me, as always, once again, is
Praying Phil Parrish.
Very good.